And just like that, we're back. Finally got everything situated now. I'm hoping to upload consistently, you know, no more 2-month breaks. Don't want to jinx myself. Also, my bad if the camera angle is bad on this video or if the audio quality turns out kind of sloppy or maybe the lighting is kind of poor. Still testing everything and working things out, so it's gonna get better with time, but for now it's probably not gonna be as good. Speaking of now, we have another chapter to review. Lookism chapter 568. So upon reading this chapter, I was filled with many emotions and I decided to open the Reddit to see if people would share these emotions. And it's safe to say I think I'm never opening the Lookism subreddit. Don't get me wrong, it's a good place to find unique perspectives on the chapter or something you may have missed that someone else has picked up. I mean, it's usually my first stop when I actually finish reading a chapter if I don't text anyone about it. But this time it was just non-stop hating for no real reason. I was initially gonna turn this chapter review into a partial rant about something that I hate about the Lookism community. And when I make that generalization, I obviously don't mean everyone in the community. I mean a select few that isn't really that few. And this select few happens to share a trait which is wanting to hate on anything no matter how good or bad it is, and trying their best to find any reason to hate on the chapter even if it was good. And by the way, I wouldn't mind if it was constructive criticism because I provide some of that too in my own chapter reviews, whether it be harsh or just purely genuine constructive criticism. It depends on whether or not I like the chapter, but this criticism is never constructive. Moral of the story is this chapter was hyperbolically overhated for no real reason, and I don't really agree with most of the hate on this chapter. I still do agree with some minor constructive criticism, that is keyword constructive, so we're just gonna get straight into it. So I think this is the only time I'll really mention a complaint that I found on the Reddit for this chapter, which is right now, and it's for the start of the chapter. I mean, this was really the only valid complaint made. Now, if you've seen the last chapter, you would know that it ended with a face-off between Jaegyeon and UJ that was supposed to be hyped up as some sort of final showdown that would, you know, decide which half-ass king is stronger and which half-ass king claims Inchon. And I don't really think anyone actually expected the fight to happen, and that's not because it was far-fetched or something. It's not because the series is predictable. It's because it's PTJ, and I'm hearing a lot of things in the community lately regarding PTJ having an art team, so he's the one fully writing the story now. But if I was unsure before this chapter, I am now 100% sure that this is PTJ's writing, because I don't think I can name a single author other than PTJ that loves blueballing his fans this much and has a genuine passion for rage baiting his audience. Keep in mind, last chapter concluded with a face-off between Jaegyeon and UJ, which are two first-generation kings of a fucking metropolitan city. This chapter started off by disregarding that completely, and somehow it still has an 8.5 rating, which is like the highest rating Korean fans have given a chapter in like fucking months. So that just kind of speaks volumes to how good this chapter actually was. Funny enough, I actually saw a post on Reddit of someone saying this chapter would probably get the worst rating. Said post and original poster actually ended up getting clowned on because this chapter, as I just mentioned, had a really high rating. As I just mentioned, the chapter pretty much just kicks off with Jaegyeon and UJ not fighting. Jaegyeon initially backs out of the fight and throws a bomb of pepper spray at the Dark Crocodile Society's underlings, and then of course running away with Daniel in speed. They attempt to flee to the manhole, which was their primary exit at first. However, to their surprise, it was actually blocked off by some wood, by the way. And the Dark Crocodile Society's number 2 orders the underlings to hurry up and try to catch speed before they run away. However, this is when UJ actually informs him that there's no need to hurry and there's no need to be fast about it because he has blocked off both the manhole and their other exit, which is then revealed to be the entrance of Inchon's Chinatown. Upon arrival, Speed is met with Hwan Ryu and the entire force of the Dark Crocodile Society, and at the time this included people like Jake Kim, Lineman, and Samuel So as well. Very disadvantageous position for Speed and Daniel. And I also like the subtle title card mention for Samuel So, which actually still lists him as Gu Kim's secret friends member, not a member of any other alliance or any other party, not even Kite Kim's whole alliance. Because he's not exactly doing this for the Dark Crocodile Society, he's not doing this for Kite Kim, he's doing this for himself. And someone that does things for himself as well and shares that quality is Gu Kim, which is why they do good together, because at the end of the day, they both know that they're there for themselves and they would rather grow independently. However, that's not really something that you can do in this world unless you're one of the strongest characters, which is Gu Kim. And Jake here tries to persuade Daniel to actually stop fighting with Speed. However, Daniel refuses to give up. He not only mentions that he's not going to give up, but he doesn't say he's gonna fight for Speed. He says he's gonna fight for the people of Inchon. And this here kind of triggers Jake's inner monologue, which is sort of shrouding his thoughts and blinding him from making the right choice. Now, he likes to refer to it as rational thinking and non-idealistic thinking, but at the end of the day, that's what Big Deal is about, and you know, that's mentioned later on in this chapter. He says Speed is done for and there's no real point of siding with them, and this is a point of the chapter that I'd like to kind of make a tangent real quick. I want to take a look at this from an outsider's perspective because of complaint I saw on the Reddit, and again, I don't want to turn this video into a rant, but this is something worthy of mentioning. I think it's something that people are missing, and you know, here I go mentioning the Reddit again, but as I said, it's something worthy of mentioning. Now, a good part of the Reddit, like a notable segment, not the entire thing obviously, but a select few, that being the same select few that I mentioned earlier on in this video, they're basically putting Jaegyeon and Speed on fraud watch because they were taking damage whilst protecting civilians later on in the chapter. Now, I know it happened later on in the chapter, but personally say, I'd like to take a look from an outsider's lens at this point of the chapter exactly, because I don't really think it's been put into perspective just how outnumbered these guys are. Numbers matter in a setting like this because it's no longer just a battle, it's a whole entire war over a metropolitan city. This is a civil war, and I don't really care if you have John Jones, Mike Tyson, or any of the fucking guys on your side. If you're being swarmed by thousands upon thousands of fighters that are trained individuals, they're not just anyone. I'm pretty sure it was mentioned that they were trained fighters. Whether or not they're fighters isn't going to matter, because although you're probably not gonna die or be knocked out or be defeated, you are going to take damage no matter what. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I have never come across a war where either side hasn't taken any damage. Especially when one of the sides has like a couple thousand people and the other side has like 5. And the reason I chose to highlight this at this point of the chapter exactly is because this is when it goes from me just ranting into the story actually backing up what I'm saying. When Jake Kim, the leader of Big Deal, is pretty much saying that siding with Daniel in speed still wouldn't give him enough force and enough power to take down the Dark Crocodile Society. I kind of feel like that speaks volumes to how outnumbered these guys are right now, because they have a first generation king on their side, they would have also had Big Deal, and they would have had the literal main character in both of his bodies on their side, and yet they are still outnumbered and at a disadvantage because of the sheer numbers of the other side. So when you make a remark like, oh, this is stupid, they're weak because they're taking damage while protecting civilians, are you really thinking? I'm not saying they should have died, I'm just saying that them taking damage is a very accurate outcome. Jake Kim is again blinded by his inner monologue that is stopping him from making the rational choice in Big Deal's ideals and in Big Deal's whole fucking definition. He's saying there's too many and why won't they give up? And he's confused as to why they're still fighting even when they're so outnumbered. And he makes a slightly naive remark here, which I don't understand what the point of that was. He asks why they're so calm when they're going up against the first generation fighters because they're not from the second generation, even though Jae-gyeon is quite literally a first generation king. But then the executives finally come in and begin to attack Speed's strongest forces, and this is another point that just backs up what I was saying earlier. They are very outnumbered because you have Daniel, the main character, who was a part of the Hunt for Gun, part of all of the workers affiliates, and a part of Charles Choi's whole assassination, self-assassination thing. All of those big crowds, and he still says this is the largest amount of people he's ever seen in his life. He says, and I quote, he's never seen this many people in his whole life. They seem to be in a sticky situation, which I don't think it's that hard to see. I mean, Jae-gyeon admits it himself. He says they're different today, and this is where we move to another part where the Reddit finds a reason to complain. The Inchon taxi union is here and they're helping Speed. Now this won't be another tangent like the last one was, not only because there was no point, but because this complaint isn't really as fruitful and it doesn't really have that much of an effect. But when someone says this whole interaction was forced, I mean, really? Fucking really, man? Genuine question, because this is not the first time this was mentioned. We've seen in the past the Inchon taxi union and some taxi drivers actually pledge allegiance to Speed, if that's the right way of saying it, and talk about how they're pretty much going to help them and they're by their side. So I'm not sure why we're confused that this would happen when their entire land is being taken and their city is being taken over. Would you not fight for yours? I mean, I don't really understand. They have like 5 representatives of their whole entire city. They have to fight. They have to help. They have no other choice when they're being taken over by thousands upon thousands of people. So I'm not exactly sure why we're acting like it's the first time, but nonetheless, it doesn't really matter. The Inchon taxi union then mentions that they're not the only ones here, and what seems to be the entire population of Inchon is actually joining them and helping Speed. Though I'll be honest, it doesn't really seem like they helped them that much as the chapter moved on, but you know, they were there for more support, I guess. And now the Dark Crocodile Society begins actually attacking the civilians that have done nothing. They're just there because they don't want to have their land be taken away from them, and they're cheering on their representatives, that being Speed and Daniel, because they don't want them to fucking die. Yet the Dark Crocodile Society still sees it fit to hit women, hit children, hit old people, just even men that are harmless. Now this is where the chapter takes a very ameliorative turn. Very good plot twist here, because it kind of just wakes this chapter up and wakes this entire arc up. You know, disregarding the whole ratings aspect, because Korean fans can sometimes be a little too harsh. This whole interaction here honestly made the chapter 1,000 times better for me. And it's where Jake Kim begins fighting back against his inner monologue that was shrouding his thoughts earlier. He's now slowly starting to wake up, and he actually calls Lineman and says, Lineman, you asked me where I went. I went somewhere that wasn't Chinatown. It then cuts to a flashback of Jake Kim watching an old lady in Inchon. She's suffering because the Dark Crocodile Society apparently killed her husband and just ruined her life. The narrative was already clear, but if it wasn't clear to you, then it becomes clear now. They're pretty much just taking their land and using Speed as an excuse to do it. So therefore, these people don't really mind taking any harm for Speed because they're the only people fighting for the real Inchon. Now Jake here finally comes to a couple realizations and is awakened to the truth behind the Dark Crocodile Society, and he questions himself and whether it's the right choice to actually ally with the Dark Society when all of this is happening. First, he asks himself how he would deal with Ki-tae Kim had he not allied with the Dark Crocodile Society, and then he asks himself what the difference between him and his older brother would be if he actually did ally with the Dark Society. He then asks himself, is there really any meaning of gaining strength if it's at the cost of abandoning the weak? And it then cuts back to the present, and he asks Lineman, what is Big Deal? Lineman answers by saying, well, frankly, I don't know, I joined after you. And when Jake asks him why he joined, Lineman says, well, it's for romance. Romance that goes against anyone for the sake of protecting the weak. Jake then drops one of the best one-liners in Lookism history, if you consider this to be a one-liner, saying, Lineman, I'm sorry for being a stupid brother. And then he fucking diagonally propels the guy into mid-air with a punch, saving Daniel. He says saving, but it's not really saving, it's just protecting him momentarily. And this to me was one of the best moments, not only in this arc or this chapter per se, but in all of Lookism. And the reason I don't say it's the best because something else happens in the future in this chapter that was absolutely amazing. But that's not to take away from the glory of this moment, because this was absolutely fucking legendary. And then Lineman hears what Jake says and immediately locks in, and he then damn near teleports through a couple poor guys, creating a lightning burst so bright you could see it with your eyes closed. And he then makes a direct announcement that Big Deal is joining forces with Speed, and that Big Deal is strong, so if you don't wanna get trampled or whatever. And they decide it's time to form a new alliance. Following this, we get an interaction between Jake Kim and UJ Sion, where UJ mentions that he tricked Samuel just to get Jake's attention, and he asks him how he's planning on dealing with Kite Kim now that he's betrayed the Dark Crocodile Society. And then Jake responds with, we'll figure it out, which was the last straw for UJ, and he decides, alright, I'm just gonna kill this guy. And then you wouldn't believe it, but Samuel comes out of nowhere with the reused panel of the fucking century, mugs the entire main cast, and asks UJ if it's true that he tricked him. He then says that he chose Jake Kim over Kite Kim, and that makes the Dark Crocodile Society an enemy of both parties now. And that was the reason Jake thought Samuel was siding with them, however it's then revealed that that wasn't the reason. We then get a flashback, and it was revealed to us that the entire time Samuel was pretty much eavesdropping on UJ talking shit about him to Jake. And he then drops another one of the coldest one-liners we've ever had in the series, if you consider this one to be a one-liner, saying, Lineman, lighter. Lineman then says, although it's just for a bit, I'm glad to see you two fight together again. And that was our official confirmation that Samuel Sow is now siding with Big Deal, and even though it's just for a little bit, excluding Sinu Han, we can now finally say that the OG Big Deal is back.